Week we were in, I don't know if you were here, some of you guys were, but had a bilingual service last week for Vacation Bible School. We kicked it all off. But like you see, we're back to normal, back to regular. And we've been in the middle of this series called Do You Even Lift, which we're going to wrap up next week, just so you know. And what we're doing throughout these last couple of weeks, we're looking at, guys, the life of Samson. All right, what the Bible considers the strongest man who had ever lived. And it's kind of hard to quantify that now. Some people may say, but that's what, what was written, what the Bible says. It's one of the things that was Samson's trademark, was his strength. How God used Samson was through mighty acts of strength. And so we're looking at his life to look at it, not just to apply it to our own lives, and to see what does it teach us also about who God is. And so we've been looking at this phrase, do you even lift, is a cultural statement. Again, I've been trying to educate maybe some of you guys. If somebody says that to you, that is an insulting statement. If somebody says, bro, do you even lift? They are questioning your level of fitness and your level of strength. They are mocking you, calling you weak. Okay, that's kind of what that phrase is. But I'm not turning around and using that in a way to insult any of you. Okay, we're not going to have a push-up competition at the end of today. The idea, though, is this. I'm not using it to humiliate you. I'm using it to inspire you. Because there is something that we've been talking about, that if we can learn to lift regularly, persistently, consistently, progressively, we will find a level of strength that you can't find in any gym. All right? And no protein shake, no creatine, none of that's going to help you find it. And it's this, and here's how I'm asking this question. Do you lift the name of the Lord? That's how I'm asking it. Do you lift the name of the Lord? Week one, when we were looking at Samson's life, we were talking about how Samson, his number one job, his mission in life, well, actually his manner of life, was to lift the name of the Lord. That's what his responsibility was. From the time he was born to the time he was supposed to die, his manner of life was to lift the name of the Lord. All right, and his mission was to to free his people, because they were enslaved by the Philistines. And so to lift the name of the Lord, we've been saying also another way of saying is to magnify the Lord. I think I have the Bible verse in Psalms. King David said and used that phrasing. In fact, you can look in many of the Psalms and in many other places. Actually, it's the other Psalm, I think, is now at the very beginning. All right, I'll mention it then. One of the Psalms that David says, it's actually Psalms, I think I wrote 32:3. He says, let's magnify the Lord. That's the one. Let's magnify the Lord with me, and let's lift his name. Actually, the other phrase is to exalt. Some other translations use the word lift. And so if you ever see in the Bible the phrase is lift the name of the Lord, magnify the name of the Lord, honor the name of the Lord, praise the name of the Lord, worship it, that's all the same thing. That's all the same thing. It's all different ways of saying the same thing. And so we've been using, I had this visual, which I actually left in my office. And so I've had these two visuals of a magnifying glass and a telescope, because those are two examples of magnification, right? I totally butchered that word. Two examples of magnification. Now, we don't magnify the Lord like a magnifying glass. Guys, we've all used those. We've all played with those and looked at different things as kids or in science class. What are magnifying glasses for? To make small things look big, right? If you ever use a microscope, same thing. We use magnifying glasses to make small things look big. But that's not how we lift and magnify the name of the Lord. Okay? That's how, we are unable to do that if we magnify the things of this world. If we make small things bigger than what they really are, then we miss out on what we can find when we instead magnify God. And so when we magnify the things in this world, we're making the pleasures of this world seem bigger and seem to matter more. We look at the problems that we have and blow them up even bigger. We look at so many things, and when we do that, we actually miss out on who God is, because you cannot magnify the God of this world by magnifying the things of this world. So not like a magnifying glass. Instead, I've had this telescope. And what does a telescope do? A telescope doesn't point down to the earth. What does a telescope do usually? It points up to the heavens. It points out of this world. And with that, a telescope doesn't make small things look big. What does a telescope do? It makes big things seem as big as they are. They help us to see big things as what they truly are. And when we magnify the Lord, when we lift his name, what we are doing is we are putting God as a bigger priority in our life. We are actually acknowledging him more, caring more. So when we magnify him, we are making it purposeful to make God a bigger and take a bigger space up in our lives and our mind. And when we do that, that's when we begin to find just the beauty of who God is. Just like if you ever looked in a telescope and saw, wow, the moon just looks so much cooler than just through me just looking at it. And so it's the same thing. It says God just seems not just bigger, but he seems better. And we actually get to know him more. He actually, the more we magnify our God, guys, I want you to check this out. The more we magnify God, the more his work is magnified in us. And that's what we're talking about. And that's what the thing with Samson. So week 1, we talked about this, that your manner of life will determine your mission in life. Your manner of life will help you determine if you will ever fulfill your mission in life. Guys, look, we got a lot of graduates that just kind of started out, everywhere, college, high school, all this. And everybody got goals. And I mean, some of you still have goals and dreams that you want to do. Well, hey, your mission in life, whatever it is, maybe your mission is to be debt-free, or your mission is to buy a house. Your mission is just to do something awesome, write a book, do this, do that. Well, your mission in life will never be fulfilled if there's not a plan or a manner of life to get you there. Does that make sense? And so with Samson, at the very beginning, his father wanted to know not only what his mission was, but what is his manner of life. Because he knew that if he was supposed to free his people, like the angel said he would, what is his manner of living? How is he supposed to live? The little things to add up to accomplish something big. And so that was week 1. And then week 2, we talked about this with Samson, that your passions can either develop or destroy your potential. Passions can either develop or destroy your potential, depending on, right, how you focus on what it does. And so with Samson, he had amazing potential. God showed up in his life in mighty ways, and through strength and through amazing things. Yet, he not only would magnify the Lord, but he would go back and forth. From magnifying the things of this world and magnifying the Lord and lifting the things of this world. I'm like, wow, this is important, to lifting the name of the Lord. God, you were important. He would go back and forth. And unfortunately, we saw last time when we left Samson, the story of Samson, his story took a turn for the worse because he compromised his commitments to God. He compromised his manner of life. And now it looked like he was about to fail in the one mission he was born for. Because he compromised in the small things. His passions now turned on him. He became a prisoner to his own passions. Not only spiritually, all right, but also literally. He actually became the strongest man that the Philistines could not conquer, could not outsmart, could not find a way to trap, was undone by a woman. All right, now, and I'm not saying that in the sense of a little, controversial side. It was a whole army could not take this man out. And how did this one woman do it? How does one woman do it? Because of it was really Samson's commitment. He actually cared more about pleasing this woman than he did about pleasing God. And then he compromised his commitments. And then the presence of the Lord left him. Because the 3 things that he was called to do, he had these 3 promises. If you keep to these 3 promises, don't touch dead things, don't drink alcohol, don't cut your hair. 3 weird rules, I know. But these 3 rules were meant to be a constant reminder that you have to lift the name of the Lord if you're going to free the Lord's people. And one by one, compromised. One by one, compromised. And then finally, he told that woman, okay, fine, you want to know? You want to know why I'm so strong? Look, I'll tell you. I'm dedicated to God, and my hair is one of my final promises. If I cut my hair, it's done. And so, she took a bribe. The army paid her off. The Philistines, who he was supposed to conquer, he was now conquered by those same people. Because he decided to please a woman instead of living to please God. And so here's where we are right now. Because, see, the situation is now, could you imagine now where Samson is? Put yourself in his spot. The humiliation he must have experienced, because here he is. He was supposed to free and conquer the Philistines, and now he was conquered by a Philistine woman. The army couldn't do it, but a one woman did. All right? And why? Could you imagine the humiliation? How much his parents knew, you were born for this. Every day of his life, I guarantee you, they told him, man, you're meant for greatness. You're meant for greatness. You're going to free God's people. He's going to use you. And God would show up in his life. And he was like, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. But again, could you imagine how here he is, not only a prisoner, but they gouged out his eyes. He's blind now. Could you imagine the humiliation he must have felt when he was alone in the prison? The shame. It's like, my life wasn't supposed to turn out like this. I can't believe I let my family down. I let God down. I let the nation down. Guys, we all know what it's like to feel embarrassed, right? And humiliated and ashamed. I mean, don't you, when you experience humiliation, don't you want to just run and hide? Right? Don't you just want to do that? If something happens to you, you just want to run and hide. What if you said something, did something, and oh my gosh, it's just the moment you just want to run and hide. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I do. I mean, I still embarrassed all the time. I mean, one time when I was a kid, I got into there was this one movie that came out when I was a kid called Three Ninjas. About Three Ninjas. Okay, so the 90s, right? So creative. Now there's these three little brothers who had this karate expert for a grandfather, and so he trained them to be ninjas. These three little white boys. And so whatever I thought it was cool. Me and my brother, we were about the same age as the kids, and so we just got into karate. And so we were just pretty, just doing it for fun. I didn't join a dojo or anything like that. But I had to get my wiggles out somehow, and so I would ask to go to the bathroom in elementary school. This is the age that I was in. I think it was like 4th grade. I wanted to get my wiggles out, and so I would go to the bathroom plenty of times. This is how I was. I couldn't sit still in class. So what I did was I would ask to go to the bathroom multiple times a day and take my sweet time. Okay, that's what I did because I couldn't sit still. I could not sit still in class all day, so I was constantly asking to go to the bathroom, and I would just go. And at this point in elementary school, we had 3 floors. My room was on the top floor. I went to the bathroom on the bottom floor because I wanted to take my time. And so I didn't lie, so I still went to the bathroom. I didn't tell them which bathroom I was going to. And so I would just take my time and go to the bathroom. But so around this time, I was into karate. It was because of this movie, okay? And so what I did was, on my way up, I would perform karate moves on the way back, which again, wasted more time. But again, I couldn't sit still. And so but no one would be in the hallways. No one would see me. At least I thought no one was in the hallways. Until I was about to turn up the last flight of stairs, and there I am doing my little karate moves, and on the top of the stairs are 2 girls in my class, staring, just looking. And then at that moment, they're just with this face like, trying to process the scenario, and then I look like a deer caught in the headlights, like my worst nightmare come true, like, okay? And then the silence was broken by, guess what? Laughter, okay? Just those little girls laughing, and now they're coming down the stairs. I have to walk past them going up. It was the end of the world. And so that was like 3rd or 4th. I think I was like, no, I was like 4th or 5th grade. That was horrible. I wanted to run and hide at that moment. That was one of those. Another one was me and Alicia. We went out. We were going out to dinner, and we could not. We hadn't been around going out on dates for a while. I had kind of dropped the ball on that. And so I'm like, you know what? I owe you one. Let's go somewhere nice. And so we've been talking about this place. She heard about it. I know it's maybe it's going to be a little expensive, so let's do it. And so we went to Texas de Brazil, which is not the super fanciest spots, but it's pretty nice. And so we went to Texas de Brazil. We went over there, and we hadn't been. We all dressed up, got nice. We're like, hey, let's have a good time, whatever. And so we're there, and I don't know if it was the fact that we hadn't been out on a date in a while, just felt awkward, just this and that, I don't know. And again, I was trying to make things extra special, so I'm like trying extra hard, right, to just make the day nice. And so I'm telling this story, and we're there at the table, and I make this gesture, this one, okay? I don't know what I was doing, I don't know what I was saying, I just made this gesture, and knocked over the 24-ounce full to the top glass of water and ice with a lemon. Not just onto the table, but in her general direction. And all 24 ounces of ice cold water fall flat on her lap in that dress. In front, and then the glass falls, and then everyone's looking. When people fall. The worst, I was like, oh my gosh, I felt like the biggest loser. Like, I'm trying to make her feel special. And she's cold and wet now. I'm like, this is not good. Like, this is the worst. Now we have to get up because the mess was so big. We have to stand up and move us to another table. Everyone's saying, and now she has a major wet spot. Looks like she just peed herself. And then this is the worst. And so I was so embarrassed. I wanted to run and hide. At that moment, I literally did. I don't even think I helped her for like the first 5 seconds because I just went. I'm like, you idiot. Like, I don't even think I helped her right away. I was just so embarrassed. So embarrassed. And so, guys, we all know that feeling, right? We all know that feeling when we were in school. You had that zit that you're trying to hide because you don't want anyone to look, right? You say that one thing and that came out wrong, or you did that one thing that you just looked stupid. I mean, one thing after another. We all know what it's like to be humiliated. We all know what it's like to be embarrassed. And we all know what it's like to feel like we want to just run and hide. Now, some of those could be silly, but a lot of those situations can be serious. And we all know what that feeling is. We just want to run and hide and get out of here. And so, guys, in the story today, we're going to see that there is a place that you and I can run and hide to when we feel embarrassed, when we're confronted with humiliating situations. There is a place we can run and hide. And Samson actually found this place, which actually turns out to be a person and not a location. So we're going to pick up the story where we left off in Judges 16, 18 through 27. So here he is. Samson had been conquered. He is now a prisoner of the Philistines, gouged out his eyes, completely blind. And now we pick up in verse 23. The Lord of the Philistines gathered together to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon their God and to rejoice. And for they had said the following. By the way, Samson at this point, I skipped this part. His job as a prisoner was to grind grain. That was his job, to grind grain. So here we pick up, and the leader of the Philistines says this prayer. Our God, Dagon, has given Samson, our enemy, into our hand. And when the people saw him, Samson, they praised their God. And they said, our God has given our enemy into our hand, the ravager of our country, who has killed many of us. I mean, Samson was just that annoying pest that they could not just get rid of. And they were excited that they did. And when their hearts were merry, they were excited and happy. They said, hey, call Samson, that he may entertain us. And so they called Samson out of the prison, and he entertained them. So this was probably Samson's lowest point in his life. I mean, it must have been bad to be alone in prison, to deal with the humiliation and the shame of the consequences of his sin. Who knows? But now here he is, and he's called out of the prison. Okay, again, his job was humiliating in and of itself. To grind grain, okay, that was a job given to like animals and slaves. Okay, and they gave him that job for one purpose. All right, to show them, hey, we're in charge, who's boss, and they wanted to give him the job of an animal, the job of a no one, to humiliate Samson even more. And so they finally call him out, and they say, hey, come out here. And again, here's Israel's champion has become the Philistines' chump. And now they have him stand out there, and they want Samson to entertain. Now Samson, guys, look, he was not a singer. He wasn't going to do a little sing and dance and do a little ditty. He wasn't about to tell jokes and tell stand up and do this and that. When they said we want to be entertained by Samson, they wanted to be entertained by his suffering, because again, he's blind. So you can imagine the situation. They were probably, as they brought him out, maybe throwing things at him, and it was hitting him. He can't dodge him because he can't see him coming. So they're probably throwing things at him, and he's getting pegged from all different spots, and they're just laughing it up. They're probably maybe putting things in his path and his ways and seeing him trip, maybe making him do something, and they're just literally having the time of their life at Samson's expense. They were being entertained by his suffering. And the modern day equivalent of that, if you can think about it, that's kind of like bullying, isn't it? If you think about that, it's kind of like bullying. I mean, when people bully, what do? When somebody is bullying someone else, they are being entertained by someone else's suffering. They say things, they do things, right? Just so and a lot of times, look, if you ever, and look, bullying doesn't go away when you're in school, okay? There's adults that get bullied all the time by employees and by this and by that, and it doesn't change. And I want you guys to know something about this. I've heard someone tell this to me, and that makes a lot of sense. Helps me to have compassion too. Hurting people tend to hurt people. Okay? Hurting people tend to hurt people. And so a lot of times, almost, I would say like 9 out of 10, or maybe I would venture to say not 10 out of 10. People who tend to bully others feel so bad about themselves that they have to make other people feel worse just so they can feel better. Isn't that sad? That's really sad. People who bully others, I want you to understand that they do that because they feel so bad about themselves. There is nothing in life satisfying that they have to enjoy. The only joy that they get in life, or the only way they feel good about themselves, is to make someone else feel worse than how they feel. And a lot of times they don't even realize they feel that bad. But hey, that's kind of like that. If this is a modern day ancient bullying, okay, it is people literally being entertained by the sufferings of someone else. And so Samson, could you imagine if there was any moment in life that Samson would want to run and hide? Do you think it would be now? Do you think it would be now that he would just want to run and hide? I mean, these are thousands of people there having a good old laugh. And so the thing is, he couldn't. He couldn't run and hide. Why? Because he was a prisoner and he was put on display. It was like the opposite of both. He could not do either one physically. But next week when we wrap up Samson's story, guys, we're going to see that Samson actually did find a place. He was able to he was able to run and hide spiritually, even though he couldn't do it physically. In fact, we just mentioned King David. King David was Samson's predecessor. What Samson started, David finished. And they lived fairly close in time frame, fairly close in history there. And something that David wrote was this. This is the verse that we had earlier, Psalms 32:7. In Psalms 32:7, David says this, that Lord, you are my hiding place, and you preserve me from trouble, and you surround me with shouts of deliverance. We actually sang a song earlier today that said that. Lord, you are my shield, you are my strength, my strong tower. All right? When the psalmist, and many other times, David and other people would write in the Psalms these poetry towards God. And they would give God this picture of being a safe place. Being not just a person, but he acted like a safe place. Like, again, strong tower. Something that you would run to and be protected. And so David found this God, who David himself went through a lot of circumstances. David himself had to go through a lot of humiliation. There was a lot of times that as king, you would make decisions and it would impact people. And David didn't always make the best decisions. And people lost lives. And bad things happened to other people. And sometimes David, because he was king, sometimes he felt like he could get away with living a double lifestyle, and that his sin would rise to the top. And his sin would be, put in the light, and God would show everyone. And then he would have to deal with the humiliation of, man, these people look at me like they're king, and I'm letting them down. I'm acting like a scoundrel. And the humiliation of when his darkest secrets would be revealed. Okay, David struggled a lot with this. But he learned and he found a God. During these moments, he found a God. When he was embarrassed and humiliated and ashamed, he found a God that he could run to, not a God that he had to run from. He never felt like he had ever run from God in these moments. In fact, it was the opposite. He ran to God during these moments. That's what David discovered, that God could be a place where he could run and hide. He was a place where he can run and hide. Now, this doesn't mean, guys, that we're living in denial. This doesn't mean that to run and hide to God does not mean run and hide from your problems. It doesn't mean that when you feel bad, just ignore it. We're not talking about living in denial and ignoring that. That's not what this is. The idea is what David is saying and what Samson learned was this, that you can run to God with your problems. You're not running away from your problems when you run to God. No, you are running to him with your problems. You are taking everything to him because you believe he is a part of the solution. That's why David said, you surround me with shouts of deliverance, that when I come to you with these things, when I come to you with whatever it is, shame, regret, mistakes, humiliation, all embarrassment, when I come to you and bring these things to you, you set me free from all of these things. And you help me to learn from my mistakes if there was one to make. And so here he is. That's what David learned. And Samson learned the same thing. Samson learned in this moment, he actually learned to do and to go to God. In fact, there's this one Bible verse I'm going to share with you in a minute. But David and both Samson found this about God, guys. Here's why they would want, especially what David would say it. See, why would David run to God during these hard times? Because he encountered a God who was not entertained by his suffering. Okay? That's what David realized, that God is not a God that is entertained by my suffering. God is not pleased when I'm in pain. Instead, he found a God who was present in the suffering. There's a lot of that's one of the biggest question marks that people have towards God. Why does God allow bad things to happen? Why is there suffering in the world? And, I don't think there's there's a lot of good answers. There's a lot of them. But for some people, it's not, maybe it's never, even the best answer won't be good enough because they still but why do I have to? Or why does this have to happen to me? Kind of situation. But see, one thing that is unique, especially about the Bible and especially about our Christian faith about God, is that God says, look, suffering is a part of life. It's a consequence of what is our choices to live in sin and to that's just one of the consequences of it. But God, despite our choices, despite our consequences, despite the fact that we've allowed suffering in the world, not him, that we've allowed it, we've entered that in. He instead shows and says, I will then be present in your suffering. I cannot promise you that nothing bad will happen to you, but I will promise you, God does promise this, that you will go through it. You will get through it. Amen. I'm not going to promise you that nothing will ever happen to you, but I will promise you that no matter what happens, you can make it through. I can bring you through. That's why David would say, I'm going to run to God. That's why Samson, even though he was alone, even though he was in prison, he learned to run to God. And next week we're going to see exactly how do you know. Well, because we're going to leave the rest of the story next week, because that's kind of what happened. And so see, guys, God is not entertained by our suffering. He is present there with us. Samson discovered that God was present in the prison where he was. And God desires to be present in our own prisons too, whether those be emotional, spiritual, mental, whatever it is. God is present in our prison. I want you to share, let's pick up where the verse left off in 25. They brought Samson out to be entertained, and they made him stand between two pillars, the Bible says. Then in verse 26, Samson says to a young man who was leading him, and he says to this young man, let me feel the pillars on which the house rests, that I may lean against them. Now the house was full of men and women. All the lords of the Philistines were there, and the roof, on the roof, just alone on the roof, there were 3,000 men and women who had looked on while Samson was entertained. So here's this big complex. Here's the big complex, and here he is. He is being entertained by thousands of people there. And Samson asks to just, where are the pillars? I just want to rest on the central pillars. I just want to rest on those for a second. Give me a break. I just need a break. Now, guys, I want you to know that Samson, before he began to lean on those pillars, he actually already began to lean on his God in the prison. Before he leaned on the pillars, he was already leaning on God in the prison. And there's one verse that I skipped, that I think it's the next one. I want you to share. This gives us the hint that it started way before this moment. And it was in verse 22. But the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. This verse was said right as he was imprisoned at the very beginning. His head was shaved. More than likely, Delilah probably drugged him up. Okay, root-feed the guy or whatever it is. And so, I don't know how else, I don't know who could be that much of a heavy sleeper that somebody can just shave your head off and you still sleep through that. So, whatever. And so, he wakes up, all of his hair is gone. One sign that his faith in God was gone. Like, he just started living his own life. He was not conquering the Philistines. Instead, he was trying to conquer a Philistine girl. That's kind of the deal. And so, here he is. All his hair is gone. His faith is gone. The presence of God is gone. His eyesight is gone. And now he's in prison, in jail. And there, verse 22 says, while he was in prison, his hair began to grow back. Now, some of you may be like, Pastor, when you cut hair, it grows back. Okay? It's not special. That's not special. That's nature. I got that. I know. Okay? I know when you cut your hair, it grows back. That's why we always have to get our hair cut. I got that. But why was this mentioned? Because again, you got to remember, why was this mentioned in the Bible? Why was this mentioned in this account? Because the hair was symbolic to Samson. It was a sign of his faith in God. It was a sign of his commitment. So for the fact, when the Bible says that his hair began to grow back, this is not just making an obvious statement. This is saying a spiritual statement. I really believe by that statement that as his hair was growing in the depths of the prison, his faith was growing at the same time. His faith was growing as well. And again, this is his lowest point in life. And his faith in God didn't decrease when the worst of the worst has happened. And his faith and his love for God did not die. It was at the worst part of his life that his faith and his love for God began to grow. He didn't blame God for his circumstances. He knew, I'm here because of my choices. I failed God. I am here because of my decisions. But yet, it was in the darkest moment in life where here he is, his faith and his love begins to grow. At this time, later on is where we just did this story. Sometime later, they brought him out after grinding grain for who knows how long. So who knows how much his hair has grown back, but we do know that his faith grew in the prison. His faith grew. That's why I told you that Samson learned how to run and hide, even in jail, because he ran to his God. And even while he was in prison, God delivered him from his shame. God delivered him from his humiliation. God delivered him from his regrets. In prison, though he is, he's in jail, he was free. God freed him. His hair and his faith began to grow. And now here he is, leaning on these two pillars. And the only reason why he was able to stand and lean on his two pillars was because while in prison, he was standing on his faith and he was leaning on his Lord. That's why. That's why he was where he is at this point. And why, which we'll pick up next week, what happens next was a result of the fact that he first came to God. He first ran to God at his lowest point in life. And so see, while he was in jail, guys, he ran to a God who's not just any God, like I said. He is not entertained by our sufferings. Instead, he's present in the prison with us. But see, there's something also very unique about our God, especially Jesus. See, Jesus, we can go to Jesus with our humiliation, with our shame, because see, Jesus knows what it's like to be humiliated. I don't know if you know this detail. They didn't tell me this as a kid because it's kind of hard to draw this as a cartoon. And no one's going to do this in Hollywood, okay? But Jesus was crucified naked. Okay? I don't know if you know that. I mean, some people, I didn't know that as a kid growing up. Jesus was crucified naked. And they did that to further humiliate the individual. Okay? Can't cover up. No hiding. Jesus was crucified on the cross naked. And while he hung there naked, his accusers, they mocked him. They made fun of him. There was a lot of people who showed up and they were entertained by the suffering. That was back then. They had nothing to do. So hey, let's watch somebody die today. I don't know what you're doing at 12 o'clock. I don't know. Let's check out that execution. He's like, I hear it's crucifixion. That one dude's in charge of that crucifixion, man. He makes it fun. Some extra gooey and stuff. Let's check that out. That's what they did for fun. And so here they are. Jesus is being entertained. Other people are being entertained by Jesus' suffering. They would make fun of him. Oh, this dude up here said he's the Son of God. He can't look at him, man, dying like a criminal. This guy who said they could tear the temple down in 3 days and build it up, and bro, you can't even save yourself from 3 nails? Bro, oh my gosh, look at this guy. They made fun of him. They mocked him. Tell me that that's not humiliating in and of itself. But see, just like Samson, like we're going to learn next week, Samson's low point was immediately followed by a high point. And the same way, Jesus' humiliation was soon followed by celebration. Because it was through that he went through one of the worst forms of pain and suffering and humiliation possible, so that we can experience the joy that only he could achieve for us through the cross and the grave, through the forgiveness of our sins, where we can be truly delivered from everything. And so see, guys, Jesus was embarrassed on the cross, so you and I can be embraced by him today. Jesus was embarrassed on the cross, so you and I can be embraced by our God. Samson found that embrace despite the embarrassment that he went through. David found that embrace despite the embarrassment that he went through. And guys, you and I can experience the same thing because, see, God embraces the embarrassed. He does not laugh at their faults. He is not entertained by their mishaps and struggles. Instead, God says, bring them to me. Come here. Come here. And God, this is our God. He embraces the embarrassed, the humiliated, the shamed, the one full of regrets. And so I ask again, do you lift the name of the Lord is the question that we're asking. And to lift the name of the Lord, guys, is how you can be free in the same way, deal, and be delivered from all these things whenever you face them, whether they're silly, whether you just said something dumb and, people laughed at you, whether you tripped and fell in front of everybody, whether this or that, you spilled a drink on your wife or whatever, whether you got caught karate, doing karate in your bedroom, or I don't know. And so whatever it is, some of it could be silly, but some of it could be serious, because there's a lot of us that, we are certain people's entertainment. They laugh at us. We know that they laugh at us. We know that they mock us when we're there, when we're not there. And I know a lot of you, because I know I deal with this a lot, I've dealt with this a lot. I know, those moments, why do we want to run and hide? Because it's in those moments that whatever insecurity we have is magnified, right? Whatever insecurity we have, if we feel bad about ourselves and somebody just does, I struggle with this so much that I would, if I saw somebody just kind of giggle, I actually would think, are they making fun of me? I don't know if you ever thought like that when you were in school or anything. I was like, are they making fun of me? I just felt that bad when I was a kid about myself. And guys, I want you to know that regardless of what it is, big or small, okay, whatever that embarrassment, shame, and the regret is, maybe you're like Samson. Maybe you had life and things were going a certain way, and then you made choices and decisions, and now you realize, oh my gosh, we had that house and we blew it, or I had that career compromised. I had all these scholarships and I lost it. I had all this potential. Everyone kept on telling me how much potential I had, and yet here I am years later, I haven't accomplished a thing. And I know a lot of us, whether young or old, can feel that regret and feel like shame, and that weighs on you. Well, guys, you don't have to carry that burden another second. Like David said, we can run and hide to our God. He can deliver us, just like he did Samson. Jesus carried that burden so we wouldn't have to. So regardless of our shame or lack of worth or humiliation, guys, I want you to know that there is a God who is present in our struggle, present in our prisons, right where we are. And if we ever, whether you are right now or if you ever find yourself in the future, if you ever find yourself at this kind of a low point, I want you to lean on Jesus and lift his name high. Because when we lift the name of the Lord, here's the thing, guys. When we lift the name of the Lord, he lifts us up out of our circumstances. And what Samson taught us is this. To lift the name of the Lord is as simple as leaning on him. That's the beginning. When you can learn to trust him and lean on him, when you lift him up in that way, he lifts you